Okay, we'll start with this. Well, some of you might have already heard that James DeGale has decided to call it a career. He made the announcement yesterday in a caption from his Instagram account that reads, "Today I announce my retirement from boxing. There have been highs and lows, but memories I will never forget. I have achieved everything I dreamed of and can retire a happy and proud man. Thank you to everyone who have supported me and shown me love. Here's to the next chapter." These are my thoughts. I think that James DeGale has made just about the wisest decision he could have made for what was left of his career. Do realize that James DeGale had the option of lingering. He had the option of being one of these guys that hung around the sport too long and paid the price as a result. But rather than doing that, he's exiting the sport on his own terms, of his own volition, and I think he made the right decision. The exhibit that he put on against Chris Eubank Jr., who really has never actually competed at the level that James DeGale has.
I mean, if you look at it, he really hasn't.
The fact that James lost that fight the way that he did, the fact that he went out there and looked the way that he looked, it was indicative that, yes, it's time for him to call it a career, because Chris Eubank Jr. is neither the most physically gifted fighter or the most skilled in any way, shape, or form. Yet against him, you're looking like a shot fighter. Against him, you're looking like a guy who might be spent. So with those things in mind, it doesn't make sense to hang around any longer. Because if you can't beat Chris, what are the odds that you'd beat a Zerto? What are the odds that you'd beat a Callum Smith? What are the odds that you'd beat a Caleb Plant?
Not good.
Essentially, not only defeat would have awaited James DeGale had he chose to stick around, but certain injury. And possibly irrevocable injury. So with those things in mind, I'm glad that he made the decision that he made. George Groves, James DeGale, they were great fighters in their time, but a new crop of super middleweights has grown in their stead. And for those guys like George, like James, the best thing to do is, you had success, you've been a world champion, you fought at the highest level, relatively speaking. So those things in mind, yeah, I think that James made the right decision, and George as well. And James DeGale's a guy with a lot of personality. So, maybe he could look into calling fights from here on out, a very popular route for high-level fighters who decide to call it a career. Maybe he can go that route, but whatever he decides to do, I wish him the best. In hindsight, you've got to look at James DeGale objectively. This is a guy that fought at the highest level as an amateur fighter. He achieved Olympic gold. And as a professional, he fought at the championship level. So while it's not as fabled a career as, say, a Floyd Mayweather's or a Manny Pacquiao's, it's still a career that's nothing to sneeze at. Not everybody gets to call themselves an Olympic gold medalist. And not everybody gets to call themselves a world champion, let alone a two-time world champion. James DeGale has fought some very good fighters. He's beat some good fighters. He's lost to some good fighters. But all things considered, it's been a good run. It has been a good run. And to James DeGale, I wish nothing but the best. And when it comes to boxers that decide to call it a career, I can think of one or two guys who really should go a similar route to James DeGale, to George Groves. Bermain Stavern immediately comes to mind given the display that he put on against Joe Joyce. I mean, Stavern was just basically hanging in there. And as punishing as the sport is for young contenders who are in their prime, just imagine how much more punishing it is for a guy like Bermain Stavern in a division where he's really dwarfed by almost every other guy that's out there. You've got your Joe Joyces, your Tony Yokas, your Deontay Wilders, your Luis Ortizes, your Anthony Joshuas, your Tyson Furies. Bermain Stavern is another guy who I think should call it a career, who should go the route that James DeGale went. Another guy that comes to mind is Robert Guerrero, who it seemed like he called it a career, but he had a little fight. And he's got another one coming up on the undercard for Sean Porter versus Yordenis Ugas. And it's tricky.
When to retire.
You can fight low-level guys to keep busy and rack up a little bit of change, but as soon as you approach that upper echelon, it becomes painfully indicative that you should call it a career. And I think that, Robert, along with Stavern, they should make that decision before they find themselves in yet another compromising situation. Because against Omar Figueroa, Robert Guerrero looked like a shot fighter. And maybe those low-level guys can't get you to look like that. But as soon as they put you in there with something interesting, the cat's out of the bag. There's some big risks associated with staying in this sport too long. And I think that those two guys really should go the route that James DeGale went. Moving on. News broke yesterday that Eddie Hearn told U.S. reporters he could offer Deontay Wilder $15 million to face either Brazil, White, or Kaunaki next, so long as he signed to face Joshua with a two-way rematch afterwards. He added that Wilder doesn't need to sign a co-promotional deal to fight on DAZN shows. And this is basically due to the fact that Deontay Wilder intends to fight on. In spite of the Tyson Fury rematch not happening, he still intends to fight on in May when the proposed rematch was supposed to go down. Deontay Wilder still plans on having a fight, presumably against his WBC mandatory challenger, Dominic Breazeale, in which case, what Eddie's basically saying is, look, if you want to fight in May, you can fight in May. If you want it to be Breazeale, it can be Breazeale. It can be White. It can be Kaunaki. But if you're willing to have that same fight that you're having anyway, if you're willing to have that fight on DAZN, you can rack up a pretty hefty payday for what could be a light day's work. Think about it this way. Showtime ain't gonna pay Deontay Wilder $15 million to fight either of them three guys. They're not. They're not gonna pay him. They're not gonna give him that kind of a payday on Showtime. Remember, Deontay Wilder went balls to the wall with Luis Ortiz, who is a dangerous fighter, and all he got out of that was $2 million. Roughly, just a little over $2 million. Whereas here what we're seeing is Hearn is willing to make him a substantial offer, and that's not even the best part. The best part is this interim fight, this proposed interim fight, would be a prelude to a Anthony Joshua undisputed title fight. It's becoming more and more apparent that Hearn means to make the fight. Anthony Joshua means to make the fight. And they've been increasing offers month by month, week by week, to try to get Deontay Wilder in the ring. So at some point, people have got to start asking, is Deontay Wilder really being reasonable?
No.
I mean, they started off offering you about $12.5 mil for a Joshua fight. That was their initial offer. You didn't like that offer. They upped the offer to $15 mil with an option, a $5 million option, to face Dillian White if Wilder so chose. He didn't like that deal either. Since that time, the offers have been progressively increasing. We're talking about more money guaranteed and a percentage split, an upside of the pay-per-view for what is a two-fight deal. These are some of the things that Wilder said that he wanted. So at this point, not only are they offering you Anthony Joshua, a two-fight deal with Anthony Joshua, but they're also offering you $15 million for a fight of your choice. A fight that you're gonna plan on having anyway in May. So if Wilder walks away from this offer, it only further highlights what I said in a previous video, that when it comes to logical decisions and logical choices, Wilder's team, that's not their strong suit. That's not what they've been doing, and, we'll see if that's the route they continue to be on. Because they're offering you guys a lot of fucking money for something you plan on doing anyway. Now, Wilder's sycophant fans, which are often a talking point here on the channel, I've no doubts that they will support whatever decision Deontay Wilder and his team decide to make. If Deontay Wilder and his team decide to make the boneheaded decision to have the fight in May on Showtime, they're going to support that. But just as well, if Wilder finally showed some common sense and chose to take up Eddie Hearn's offer, I have no doubts they would support that as well. And their opinion of DAZN would change dramatically. Because they've been trying to downplay the DAZN platform since its inception.
From the get-go.
These guys act like they're being paid to run a smear campaign against DAZN, when if you're a boxing fan, you should actually be supporting DAZN because it's bringing you quite a bit of boxing at a very affordable price. Now, you ask these guys today, DAZN's a piece of shit, it's a crappy app, they don't have any fights, whatever, in spite of them having both Canelo and Anthony Joshua and everybody else, but whatever. If you ask them about DAZN today, Wilder's fans, they're likely gonna shit on it. But if Deontay Wilder made the decision to have that same fight in May on DAZN, I can bet my bottom fucking dollar, and you can too, that their opinions of DAZN would dramatically change. Cause these guys, they don't really stand for anything. They have no integrity, thus they go wherever the wind blows. So if the wind ends up blowing Deontay Wilder into the arms of DAZN, they're gonna be all for it. They're all for whatever Deontay Wilder does, cause they act like they his side chicks, like they his side piece. And what's even better about Hearn's offer to Deontay Wilder is that it's actually dissimilar from the proposed offer that Wilder got from Bob Arum, Top Rank, the people over there at ESPN. Wilder would not have to make a co-promotional commitment to DAZN to fight there. He could be there on a fight-by-fight basis, of his own volition.
His choice.
That's saying that you don't owe these guys nothing. Just because you had your last fight there, for example, doesn't mean that your next 2, 3, 4, 5 fights have to be there. It might be a one-off, or it might be 2, 3 fights, but it's not a commitment in the ways that the ESPN Top Rank offer were a commitment. So I'll tell you, look, it's a sweet deal. Wilder's fans are looking at, how these deals have gotten progressively better, and they're telling themselves that, he's playing hard to get, but it's working. And to that I'll say this. I myself predicted that Eddie Hearn would increase the offers as time progresses and as the Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder fight grows in value. I myself predicted that months ago. So Hearn increasing the offers is no surprise to me. It really should be a surprise to Wilder's fans because they're the ones that were saying that he don't want to make that fight, yet he's doing everything he can to make that fight. He's been progressively increasing the guarantees, increasing the percentage splits, increasing the upside for Deontay Wilder. Well, Wilder's fans told you that Hearn don't want to make that fight and he wants to protect Anthony Joshua. We see that Hearn's actually trying to make that fight as best as he can. You can't have it both ways, motherfuckers. Y'all say Hearn don't want to make that fight, but he's making Wilder some real sweet deals. So at some point, you're gonna have to start making some fucking sense. If he ain't want to make that fight, he wouldn't be making offers like this to Deontay Wilder. So y'all gonna have to eat your words when it comes to that. Just as well, as far as Deontay Wilder's moves being interpreted as intelligent moves, because that's how Wilder's fans look at it, you understand. They look at it as he's playing hardball and it's working. Well, let's put it this way. Playing hardball only really works once you cash the check. Then, and only then, do you receive the benefit of playing hard to get. So up until that happens, we don't know that Wilder's making the best decisions. We don't know that stalling and holding out for more money won't result in consequences, that it won't backfire, that up until he agrees to some of these offers that are being made to him, he's not actually reaping the benefit. If he decides to have that same fight in May on Showtime, then he ain't making a smooth move because you're effectively fighting on Showtime for less money. Less money than you would have got fighting on DAZN. So don't rush to Wilder's defense saying that, oh yeah, that's a smart move. Eddie Hearn keep offering him more money. Yeah, but he's not getting more money until he accepts the offer. What if he gets beat in that time? What if he loses his title? Or what if he has a lackluster showing that affects his overall stock with the boxing public? There are any variety of consequences that could happen. There are any variety of scenarios that could happen between now and the time that Wilder finally decides to fight Anthony Joshua and finally decides to take up Hearn on some of these offers. There's a lot of shit that can happen in the in-between time. Ladies and gentlemen, upsets happen, and people rarely see them coming. That's what makes those scenarios upsets. Wilder really needs to strike while the iron is hot and take up some of these offers that Hearn's making to him. Because up until he does, all he's playing is hard to get, and he's making himself hard to want.
Al, how do you say, hey, you were going to make 20, but let's go fight Brazil now?
Well, because he should be getting close to that number anyway to fight Brazil.
20 million to fight Brazil. Why the hell would Hal Heyman pay him 20 million to fight Brazil?
Because he can get it elsewhere. It doesn't mean he has to pay him.
So you're saying to keep him, you're saying to keep Wilder from signing to someone else, you got to give him 20 million to fight Brazil?
I think you got to give him 15 million for that fight.
Wow.
But that's the marketplace. It's crazy. Don't get me wrong. But you can't have Joshua making whatever he's making, Fury making 20 million, and then Wilder sitting there going, okay, I'll take 7. Because he can get it on DAZN and he can get it on ESPN.
In welterweight news, Manny Pacquiao had this to say: I may be ringside in Texas to see Spence fight Garcia. He is quoted as saying, I might go and watch in Texas. I will watch how Spence will fight, Pacquiao told Rappler. Pacquiao's next opponent has yet to be named, but Spence has been looking to face the top names in the weight class.
Except for Crawford.
In regards to a Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather rematch, Manny had this to say: the negotiations are ongoing. There will be updates 1 or 2 weeks from now, Pacquiao said. If I get to fight Mayweather and make him come out of retirement, that would be better since it would give me the chance to prove that I could win this time. These are my thoughts. You know, a Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence fight, it could have considerable value. It could. It's a far more intriguing matchup than Pacquiao versus Broner. The thing is that, in spite of Pacquiao versus Broner not being as intriguing a matchup as this, it did involve two very popular fighters, two very polarized figures in the sport of boxing, and yet the reported numbers for that fight were kind of underwhelming. I expected better. I expected more than a mere 400,000 buys. Those things in mind, you really have to wonder how this fight with Spence and Manny would do, because it would undoubtedly be a pay-per-view.
That's what they'd sell it.
That's what Manny's still hanging around for. That's what he's still lingering in the sport of boxing for. He's lingering for paydays. And, I'm of the opinion that a Pacquiao-Spence fight and what that fight could do would hinge on what Spence's fight, his upcoming fight with Mikey Garcia, does. I'll tell you that if the numbers are somewhere in the neighborhood of 325 to 400,000 between Mikey and Errol, then I don't think that
Dumb numbers.
those set of numbers would make for an even bigger return in a Spence versus Pacquiao fight. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that Mikey and Errol's fight is going to do piss poor numbers. What I'm saying is we don't know what it's going to do. And until we do, we really can't quite put our finger on what the winner of that fight would do with Manny Pacquiao. There are plausible scenarios for the fight to do good numbers, just like there are plausible scenarios for the fight to do underwhelming numbers. And I'm referring to Mikey and Errol's fight. On one end, the fight could do good numbers because of Mikey Garcia's fan base. He's a Mexican-American fighter, and we know that Mexicans show up and show out for their guys. They support their own. In that way, there is a scenario to where maybe Mikey and Errol's fight does better than Pacquiao and Broner did with each other. There's that. But then there's another plausible scenario to where, look, it might be an intriguing fight to some, and Mexicans might actually support their guys more often than not. But at the end of the day, the pay-per-view market in America has become
Unstable.
unreliable due to price gouging, due to a lot of people who want to see a fight, but they don't want to have to pay close to $100 every time they do it. I'm telling you, you would have thought that Pacquiao and Broner's fight would have at least cracked $500,000. $500,000 is not asking a lot for two guys that are as talked about, that are as well known, and that are as polarized as Adrian Broner and Manny Pacquiao. And yet, in the American pay-per-view market, all they did was 400,000. Some insiders speculate that it actually did less than that, and the networks are just inflating the numbers because it reflects poorly on them. So there are equal and opposing views, equal and opposing scenarios as to what exactly Errol's fight with Mikey will do. But rest assured that what Errol's fight with Mikey does affect what the winner of that fight could do with Manny Pacquiao. And that's why Manny Pacquiao's still keeping the door open for a Floyd-Mayweather rematch. That's why that's still something that he is pursuing, because he knows, if I can't make money with none of these young guys that are floating around, the one person I know I can make a substantial amount of money with is Floyd Mayweather.